national inoculation program expected to end by next year. Government has no plan to increase statutory debt level for now. Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. You're watching Updates at Noon with me, Mohammed Amin Carlos. Well, the Health Ministry, the MOH, is targeting the COVID-19 vaccination program in the country to be completed by the end of this year or early next year. Now, Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham Abdullah said the vaccination program would involve 3 phases, with the first phase expected to start in March, involving 500,000 vaccines for frontline workers.
Dos yang pertama diberi, lepas tu akan diadakan masa 21 hari sebelum kita berikan dos yang kedua. Dan yang fasa kedua, itu yang fasa pertama. Fasa kedua ialah untuk golongan rentan. Mereka yang berumur 60 tahun ke atas dan juga ada penyakit tidak berjangkit ataupun berjangkit, kita akan khususkan untuk vaksinasi kepada kumpulan ni. Dan fasa ketiga kita akan memberikan kepada semua rakyat Malaysia, iaitu 17 juta, iaitu terutamanya mereka yang dalam umur yang bekerja. Jadi kita working group lah. Jadi kita akan harap kita dapat selesaikan vaksinasi pada akhir tahun ni ataupun awal tahun depan. Inilah perancangan kita untuk kita tamatkan ataupun putuskan jangkitan COVID-19 dalam negara kita.
Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham said so far the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Division under the MOH has only given conditional approval to the COVID-19 vaccine produced by pharmaceutical company Pfizer. He said the conditional approval was given after looking at the 3rd phase of clinical trials, including the side effects of the vaccine. He added that any vaccines would have side effects such as fever, redness and so on following the body's response to the vaccine. Commenting on the vaccine's effectiveness, the Health DG said Malaysia had the advantage in terms of time between 3 and 4 months to see the effectiveness of the vaccine in countries that have carried out the vaccination program earlier. He added that the Health Ministry would continue monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of the vaccine in the near and long term. Well, on another note, Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham said the Health Ministry received a huge boost in its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic when 95 private hospitals agreed to help the government treat the patients. Well, it said the ministry only began holding engagement sessions with the private sector on 23rd January and found that out of the 130 hospitals have the capability to treat COVID-19 patients and have agreed to help out. Now, thus far, the ministry has 1,286 beds, including 65 in the intensive care unit, 54 ventilators, as well as assistance from 66 medical specialists. Well, elaborating further on the matter, Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham said the ministry also used the emergency ordinance, which allows experts, staff and assets, such as the supply of medicines, to be moved from one hospital to another, either between private hospitals or between private and public hospitals. He also said that the emergency ordinance was very useful in forging cooperation with private hospitals, especially when there are emergency cases. He explained that the emergency ordinance empowered the Prevention and Control of Infectious Diseases Act 1988, that's Act 342, in facing the pandemic, which is no longer limited to certain localities and which is now spreads more sporadically compared to clusters. Meanwhile, Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham also pointed out that when the country's healthcare system was at a breaking point earlier this month, an alarm was raised to ensure there was sufficient hospitals available to cater to the COVID-19 patients. Well, he said the integration and collaboration between private healthcare providers and public hospitals that is now taking place could reduce overcrowding. The 15 billion ringgit Terima assistance package is expected to have a minimal fiscal impact on the country, and the government has no plans to increase the statutory debt level to more than 60% of the nation's gross domestic product or GDP. Deputy Secretary General of Treasury for Policy, Zakia Jafar, said the government remains committed to maintaining the fiscal deficit target to 5.4% of the GDP. Well, Zakia said that despite the introduction of the Terima package, the federal government's debt level is expected to remain manageable and not exceed the level that has been set, as the government is still spending prudently. On the second movement control order, that's the MCO 2.0's impact on economic growth, she said there is no doubt that it would affect the nation's growth projections this year. Well, Zakia said that oil prices are expected to remain stable in line with demand trends and the expectations of economic recovery. Well, apart from that, the country's exports have also returned to be on an uptrend following the recovery of trade with major trading partners. Meanwhile, she said that the government will do its best to avoid imposing a full MCO where all economic activities will be suspended by halting all businesses and manufacturing activities. Zakia said the country could not afford to face a prolonged and more serious economic crisis. She further assured that the government would act as soon as possible if the situation changed, if necessary. Well, for the first time, the Sri Subramania Swami Temple Batu Caves Silver Chariot will make its journey with a limited participation of 10 people without involving the public in conjunction with Thaipusam this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, the chariot processions, which actually started in 1983, were normally accompanied by 10,000 Hindu devotees and took about 16 hours. But this time, its journey would be faster and expected to end in about 3 hours without making a stop at any location. The temple's committee chairman, Tan Sri R. Nadaraja, said the 10 people who would be accompanying the 7.3-meter-high chariot would include the driver, electrical technician, lighting man, a temple priest, and 5 committee members.
In spite of this, we got this approval. We must be very thankful to the government. We don't want any crowd, any single devotees to come to Sri Mahamariamman Temple. That is on day of tomorrow morning, 3 a.m. We don't want anybody to come. Please be at home and you all can see.
Tan Sri Nadaraja further promised that the standard operating procedures or SOPs set by the National Security Council, the MKN, and the Kuala Lumpur City Hall, DBKL, would be complied with during the journey by the chariot and on the day of celebration. He also urged Hindus not to take part in the procession and not to turn up at the Sri Subramania Swami Temple on Thaipusam Day on 28th January in the light of the national situation in facing the COVID-19 pandemic. Thaipusam is a festival celebrated by Hindus worldwide in the month of Thai, namely the 10th month of the Tamil calendar, to remember the event when Lord Murugan received a holy spear from his mother Devi Parvati to eradicate the evil force Surapadman and bring back peace and prosperity to humankind. Well, starting Friday, all mosques in major towns, districts and sub-districts in Kelantan will be allowed to hold Friday prayers with a maximum of 50 congregants. Now, this will take effect until 4th February or throughout the movement control order, the MCO, to curb the spread of COVID-19. Elaborating further in a statement released, Kelantan State Islamic Religious and Malay Customs Council, or MAIC President Tengku Temenggung Tan Sri Muhammad Rizam Tengku Abdul Aziz said daily congregational prayers will also be allowed at all mosques with a maximum of 12 congregants comprising only the Imam, Bilal, Siak and mosque committee members. For general daily congregational in Surau and Musala, only 5 people are allowed, including the Imam and Bilal. Well, it said this has received the consent of the Sultan of Kelantan, Sultan Muhammad V, as the head of religion, as enshrined in Article 6, subsection 1 of the state's constitution. Tan Sri Muhammad Rizam said the standard operating procedures, the SOPs for the Friday prayers and the general mass prayers remain unchanged and must be fully complied with by the management of the mosques Surau and Musala. He added that action will be taken against non-compliance of the SOP. Pengurusan AIS Selangor Sendirian Berhado, AIS Selangor has increased its capital expenditure allocation for its non-revenue water or NRW reduction programs this year to 293 million ringgit from 255 million ringgit last year. Well, of the amount, 170 million ringgit will be used to replace all old pipes and 16 million ringgit to replace old and damaged meters. In a statement released yesterday, its Chief Executive Officer Suhaimi Kamaral Zaman said AIS Selangor has successfully brought down the NRW rate to 28.6% last year versus 29.7% in 2019. Well, he also said this achievement exceeded the target rate of 29.2% set by the National Water Services Commission, or SPAN, despite the implementation of the movement control order to curb the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, in line with its success in reducing the NRW rate since 2019, AIS Selangor is determined to continue to reduce the NRW rate to 25% in 2025 and then to 15% by 2049. Well, last year, Suhaimi said AIS Selangor had implemented various initiatives to reduce the NRW rate, including the introduction of the leakage specialist team, active leakage control program, district meter zones, establishment and old pipe replacement program. Well, labour shortage is more detrimental to both estate and smallholders in Malaysia's oil palm industry than a global price drop. Well, according to a Khazanah Research Institute or KRI study, a 30% reduction of labour from the current level would see production fall by half, and a further of 80% would lead to a system collapse as production reached only 20% from the business as usual, also known as BAU level. Well, Professor Dr. Datin Paduka Fatimah Muhammad Arshad, well, the lead author of the study and visiting senior fellow of KRI, therefore said a COVID-19 outbreak among the migrant workers in the oil palm estates could prove detrimental. Well, she said as such, industry players must be vigilant in ensuring the adherence to COVID-19 standard operating procedures or SOPs, improve workers' accommodation and adopt digitalization to minimize menial processes. Meanwhile, the study also revealed that Malaysia's oil palm planted area was nearing its ceiling limit of 6.5 million hectares, with 5.9 million hectares belonging to large estates, while 986,000 hectares was owned by smallholders in 2019. It showed that to reduce their dependence on land, there was a dire need for the oil palm industry to improve yield, expedite replanting, reduce non-labour input, costs to increase production and revenue.
Confused or worried about symptoms during the COVID-19 pandemic? If you only have a runny nose or are sneezing, you may have a cold or allergies. Have you lost your sense of taste or smell? Are you experiencing shortness of breath? These are common symptoms of COVID-19. Coughing, fatigue and fever are all symptoms of both flu and COVID-19. If you have a temperature above 38 degrees Celsius or 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, call your local healthcare provider or hotline for medical advice and ask whether you need a COVID-19 test. If you have any COVID-19 symptoms or are waiting for test results, stay home and isolate from other members of your household. Drink fluids and eat well. Always wear a mask if you're in the same room as others. If you test positive for COVID-19, follow your healthcare provider's advice. If at any time you experience a danger sign like difficulty breathing, chest pain, confusion, loss of speech or mobility, don't wait. Seek medical care immediately. Remember, you can prevent colds, flu and COVID-19 by following a few basic precautions. Stay safe and protect each other. We're in this together. Know your risk, lower your risk.
And with that, we conclude Updates at Noon. In our top story, National Inoculation Program expected to end by next year. Well, tune into News at 10 coming up at 10 p.m. on My Freeview saluran Berita RTM. Or you can also stream the news via RTM's My Click. Well, folks, before we go, let's take a look at a long-awaited face-off of two colossal titans in Godzilla vs. Kong coming to theaters on the 26th of March. I'm Mohammed Amin Carlos. Thanks for watching.